Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt here with Louis D'Souza. Today is Monday, April the 29th, 2019. It's 8 a.m. in New York, 5 a.m. in Los Angeles, 1 p.m. in London, and Sydney, Australia is around 10 p.m. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I'm happy that we're starting another week of doing the show. That's always a bright spot for me, and I get to do it with my friend Louis. And Steve doesn't seem to be able to join us today, but that's all right. We're going to be talking about the book that we've been working on for the last 2 weeks now, Illusions by Richard Bach, which came out, I believe, in 1975. And I remember reading it back then, Louis, and wondering where on earth did this come from? Because it was like nothing I'd ever read before.
Yeah, fantastic book. Absolutely amazing.
It is amazing. And there's a copy of it for those who have never seen the book before. You can find this on Amazon. You can find it on Barnes & Noble and so forth.
How can there be people who don't know this book? It's just impossible.
You would think, because there are literally tens of millions of people who are fans of Richard Bach, and particularly because of this book. But yeah, believe it or not, there are people who had, Steve Rollin never heard of it before.
I know.
There are a lot of people who've never heard of this. And what's remarkable is that there were so many people in law of attraction circles who have never heard of this book. And, I think it's just because of when it came out. People know who, well, there are many people who know who Napoleon Hill is because of Think and Grow Rich. That has really, kind of stood the test of time. But there are a lot of books like that have come out that modern LOAers just really don't know about. So I can't say I'm totally surprised.
Is miles ahead of, even though Think and Grow Rich was very advanced, Illusions is still, I don't know. It's way beyond its time.
It was daring. That's the way I read it. When I first read the book, I thought, wow, he's daring to actually write this during the 1970s? That's impossible. It was such a repressive time in terms of, exploring alternatives to traditional religion and traditional spiritual practices and so forth. And to have him come out with a book at that time was truly revolutionary, in my view. Put it this way, among the very few people who I could actually talk to about it, we did it in whispers. It's not like today on social media where everything gets blasted out. You did it very quietly because you were afraid that the rest of society was going to crush you for reading this, this subversive text.
It just blows you away.
It really does, yeah. So we've read chapter 1, which was written kind of in biblical scriptural form in a sense. It has like chapter and verses and that kind of thing. And the verbiage is kind of Old Testament style. And then chapter 2 is where we meet the characters, Donald, Shimoda, and Richard. And Richard meets Donald and finds out this guy's got a little bit going on that other people don't have. It's a little surprising to him, to say the least. And so anyway, they've decided they're going to kind of hook up and they're going to fly around the Midwestern cornfields giving biplane rides to locals for $3 a ride, and we kind of explore things together. Meanwhile, Richard's trying to figure Donald out, and he, to be fair, this is kind of a spoiler alert here, but he spends the rest of the book trying to figure Donald out. This is not something that goes away. And of course, as readers, we're doing the same thing. We're trying to figure out what Donald's all about. Like, what's this guy going to do next? It's incredible. So, anything that you want to add before we start reading the chapter?
No, let's dive straight into it so we can discuss it.
Okay. And by the way, I haven't loaded it up yet, but if you're listening to us on the live stream on YouTube, thank you for joining us. And, feel free to add any questions or comments you have. We'll try to incorporate that into our discussion of the book and of the entire topic of the law of attraction as presented in Illusions. So, feel free to join in because we love that. And I will now get started. So chapter 3, or part 3 of Illusions. Throngs and masses and crowds of people, torrents of humanity pouring against one man in the middle of them all. And then the people became an ocean that would drown the man. But instead of drowning, he walked over the ocean, whistling, and disappeared. The ocean of water changed to an ocean of grass. A white and gold Travel Air 4000 came down to land on the grass, and the pilot got out of the cockpit and put up a cloth sign, "Fly, $3, fly." It was 3 o'clock in the morning when I awoke from the dream, remembering it all and for some reason happy for it. I opened my eyes to see in the moonlight that big Travel parked alongside the fleet. Shimoda sat on his bedroll as he had when first I met him, leaning back against the left wheel of his airplane. It wasn't that I saw him clearly, I just kind of knew he was there. "Hi, Richard," he said quietly in the dark. "Does that tell you what's going on?" "Does what tell me?" I said foggily. I was still remembering and didn't think to be surprised that he'd be awake. "Your dream. The guy and the crowds and the airplane," he said patiently. "You were curious about me, so now you know, okay? There were news stories. Donald Shimoda, the one they were beginning to call the Mechanic Messiah, the American avatar who disappeared one day in front of 25,000 eyewitnesses." I did remember that. Had read it on a small-town Ohio newspaper rack because it was on the front page. "Donald Shimoda?" "At your service," he said. "Now you know, so you don't have to puzzle me out anymore. Go back to sleep." I thought about that for a long time before I slept. "Are you allowed? I didn't think you'd get a job like that. You know, the Messiah. You're supposed to save the world, aren't you? I didn't know the Messiah could just turn in his keys like that and quit." I sat high on the top cowling of the fleet and considered my strange friend. "Toss me a 9/16 wrench, would you please, Don?" He hunted in the tool bag and pitched the wrench up to me. As with the other tools that morning, the one he threw slowed and stopped within a foot of me, floating weightless, turning lazy in midair. And the moment I touched it, it went heavy in my hand, an everyday chrome vanadium aircraft end wrench. Well, not quite every day. Ever since a cheap 7/8 broke in my hand, I bought the best tools a man can have. This one happened to be a snap-on, which, as any mechanic knows, is not your everyday wrench. Might as well be made of gold, the price of the thing, but it's a joy in the hand, and you know it will never break, no matter what you do with it. Of course you can quit. Quit anything you want. If you change your mind about doing it, you can quit breathing if you want to. He floated a Phillips screwdriver for his own amusement, so I quit being the Messiah. And if I sound a little defensive, well, maybe it's because I'm still a little defensive. Better than keeping the job and hating it. A good Messiah hates nothing and is free to walk any path he wants to walk. Well, that's true for everybody, of course. We're all the sons of God or children of the is or ideas of the mind or however else you want to say it. I worked at tightening the cylinder base nuts of the Kinner engine. A good power plant, the old B5, but these nuts want to loosen themselves every 100 flying hours or so, and it's wise to stay one jump ahead. Sure enough, the first one I put the wrench to went a quarter turn tighter, and I was glad for my wisdom to check them all this morning before flying any more customers. Well, yes, Don, but it seems as if Messiahing would be different from other jobs, you know? Jesus going back to hammering nails for a living? Maybe it just sounds odd. He considered that, trying to see my point. "I don't see your point." Strange thing about that is he didn't quit when they started first calling him Saviour. Instead of that piece of bad news, he tried logic. "Okay, I'm the Son of God, but so are we all. I'm the Saviour, but so are you. The works that I do, you can do. Anybody in their right mind understands that." It was hot up on the cowling, but it didn't feel like work. The more I want to get something done, the less I call it work. Satisfying, to know that I was keeping the cylinders from flying off the engine. "Say you want another wrench," he said. "I do not want another wrench, and I happen to be so spiritually advanced that I consider these tricks of yours mere party games, Shimoda, of a moderately evolved soul, or maybe a beginning hypnotist." "A hypnotist? Boy, are you ever getting warm. But better hypnotist than Messiah. What a dull job. Why didn't I know it was going to be a dull job?" "You did," I said wisely, and he just laughed. "Did you ever consider, Don, that it might not be so easy to quit after all? That you might not just settle right down to the life of a normal human being?" He didn't laugh at that. "You're right, of course," he said, and ran his fingers through his black hair. "Stay in any one place too long, more than a day or two, and people knew I was something strange. Brush up against my sleeve, you're healed of terminal cancer, and before the week's out, there I am back in the middle of a crowd again. This airplane keeps me moving, and nobody knows where I came from or where I'm going next, which suits me pretty well." "Well, you're going to have a tougher time than you think, Don." "Oh? Well, yeah, the whole motion of our time is from the material toward the spiritual. Slow as it is, it's still a pretty huge motion. I don't think the world is going to let you alone." I got to interrupt and say, just reading that when I first read that, that alone blew my mind the first time I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not me they want. It's the miracles. And I can teach, somebody else. I can let anybody else be the Messiah. I won't tell them it's a dull job. And besides, there is no problem so big that it cannot be run away from. I slid from the cowling down to the hay and began tightening the cylinder nuts at number 3 and 4 cylinders. Not all of them were loose, but some were. You are quoting Snoopy the dog, I believe. I'll quote the truth wherever I find it, thank you. Well, you can't run away, Don. What if I started worshiping you right now? What if I get tired of working on my engine and start begging you to heal it for me? Look, I'll give you every dime I make from now to sundown if you'll teach me how to float in the air. If you don't do it, then I'll know that I'm supposed to start praying to you, Holy One, sent to lift my burden. I love that one too, because I don't think there's anything that so well expresses the insanity of religion than that. But that's my viewpoint. Anyway, he just smiled at me. I still don't think he understood that he couldn't run away. How could I know that when he didn't? Did you have the whole show, like you see in the movies from India, crowds in the streets, billions of hands touching you, flowers and incense, golden platforms with silver tapestries for you to stand on when you spoke? Nah. Even before I asked for the job, I knew I couldn't stand that, so I chose the U.S. and I got the crowds. It was pain for him, remembering, and I was sorry that I brought the whole thing up. He sat in the hay and talked on, looking through me. I wanted to say, for the love of God, if you want freedom and joy so much, can't you see it's not anywhere outside of you? Say you have it, and you have it. Act as if it's yours, and it is. Richard, what is so damned hard about that? But they didn't even hear, most of them. Miracles, like going to auto races to see the crashes. They came to me to see miracles. First it's frustrating, and then after a while it just gets dull. I have no idea how the other messiahs could stand it. Well, you put it that way, it does lose some of its charm, I said. I tightened the last nut and put the tools away. Where are we headed today? He walked to my cockpit, and instead of wiping the bugs off my windshield, he passed his hand over it, and the smashed little creatures came alive and flew away. Now that's when I knew I was reading something strange. I had never read anything like that before. His own windshield never needed cleaning, of course, and now I knew his engine would never need any maintenance either. I don't know, he said. I don't know where we're headed. What do you mean? You know the past and the future of all things. You know exactly where we're going. He sighed. Yeah, but I try not to think about it. Now, I got to ask you, from an LOA perspective, what does that tell you about Donald Shimoda?
Just give me 1 second. Walt.
Oh, I see we lost your video. I didn't realize that. Okay. Well, tell you what, while you're checking things out, I will continue reading, then I'll come back and ask you about that. So let's see, where were we? Oh, you're back again.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry.
That's right.
You can just continue reading. We'll discuss it a bit later.
All right. Okay. Let's see. Where am I? For a while, as I was working on the cylinders, I got to thinking, wow, all I have to do is stay with this guy and there will be no problems. Nothing bad will happen and everything will turn out fine. But the way he had said that, I try not to think about it, made me remember what had happened to the other messiahs sent into the world. Common sense shouted at me to turn south after takeoff and get as far away from the man as I could get. But as I said, it gets lonely flying this way alone, and I was glad to find him just to have somebody to talk with who knew an aileron from a vertical stabilizer. I should have turned south, but after takeoff I stayed with him, and we flew north and east into that future that he tried not to think about. Oh, that's the end of the chapter. So let me go back to my question. What do you think of that? When Donald Shimoda says, or when Richard says, what do you mean? You know the past and the future of all things. You know exactly where we're going. And Donald replies, yeah, but I try not to think about it. I mean, that's an interesting comment from an LOA guy. You don't really expect that.
Well, if you think about it, how many lives have you lived? Thousands. Now, if you were born into this life and you remember being an old man, young woman, old woman, this race, that race, this planet, that planet, this alien, that alien, you'd just be totally confused.
True.
So the design is just to erase it and give you a clean slate to play with, because everything's only in the now, and your past really has brought you to where you are now. So your only job is to move from where you are now to forward. So, try not to think about it is, when you do become more and more enlightened, you do start seeing glimpses of past, present, and future. Many people do. And that can become very, very confusing. I've seen people who have become totally confused by it all. They've got knowledge about this person's dying or this person's got this sickness and that one, and they don't really know what to do or how to help people with it all. And the knowledge itself is quite confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a great validity in not really worrying about it or knowing about it, and just focusing on this is where I am, this is where I want to go, and let the law of attraction bring cooperative components so that we can move forward. So it's really a protection mechanism, I would say, something that is there just to help us keep our sanity.
Which I can understand. That makes sense. The one thought that does keep crossing my mind when I read that particularly was that he sighed. In other words, it was almost like he was resigning himself to something he didn't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine it would be a burden. It's just too much information, too much knowledge, too much in the physical universe. From a source perspective, you have it all, So you're living in a completely different dimension, but you're not having to block it into the physical time-space reality, where trying to put all the pieces together and keep a linear type of clarity of what's going on is not the simplest thing in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably true. And indeed, if that's kind of what we're waking up to now from all that I'm hearing from various people, not just in LOA circles, but spiritual circles in general, that there is sort of like a continuation of the pattern that Richard describes in this book. He described it as the whole world kind of slowly evolving toward a greater and greater awakening. And that does seem to be happening today. There does seem to be more and more people who are kind of oriented in this direction.
I think the clarity we need to get from all this is, and a lot of people might not quite see this, so I will try and elaborate, is that we have never, ever, ever on this planet been more focused on what we want and more evolved ever. Now, you can go back to the Lemurians, you can go back to anybody, to any group on this planet, but none of them are more evolved than we are here now. We are the leading edge. We're the bleeding edge, completely.
Bleeding edge, right?
So when you start understanding that, you understand that you expand using the contrast, you die and you become your expansion, and you become the expansion of everybody else. Then with that new expanded energy, you get born into a life again, bringing the new, clean, expanded energy with you. So there's no ways it can go backwards. It's impossible. It's not the way it's designed. It never is.
So do you think that that tendency, that pattern that you're describing, well, let me ask you, how do you think that is affecting the people who are becoming more and more spiritually aware? How does that impact the lives of people who are exploring this stuff?
So the difference between an aware person and a not aware person is the conscious deliciousness of the experience.
Okay.
So that's where the difference comes in. Student once goes to a teacher and says, Master, it's easy for you. You're enlightened. It's, there's no problem. You don't have any problems. And he said, no, I'm sorry, that's not true. So the only difference between you and me is I deal with them when they're small. When they're not such an active vibration, they're easy to stop. Like Abram always gives that example when you've got a car riding down the road, very slowly, you can just get in front of it and stand in front of it and stop it. But once it's got a bit of momentum and going down the hill, it's not so easy to stop.
This is true. Superman has a hard time with that one. Yeah, right.
You're not going to stop it at the bottom of that hill.
Not really.
Not that easy.
It may stop you, but otherwise, yeah.
You've got to understand the momentum of vibration. And, when you understand the law of attraction, it's a lot to do with momentum. How often have you thought this?
That's an interesting point, too. The momentum part is about how it is, like you say, it's a challenge to see how far ahead of the curve can you get. In other words, how early can you catch something before it spirals out of control when it's something you don't want? And also, how can you leverage the situation when it's something you do want? And that's really the skill we're learning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're learning to take vibrations that the planet and humans have got that is working for you, that you like, and you start using that to your advantage and riding the wave of that vibration. And you start realizing that those vibrations that the planet has been using that is not serving you, you don't think about anymore. You don't put any focus on. You don't dig them up. You don't look at them. You don't take them out of their graves and shake them awake. Okay, you just focus on those active ones which you like, the new ones which you like, and you start realizing that you can totally create your own reality in a way you've never dreamt. And you can break laws and rules that people have held forever to be true, and you can break them, like the first person who lifted a greater weight than the previous guy, and so it goes on and on and on. A person who's run a 2.4 faster than anybody else has, and a person who's run 100 meters faster than anybody else has, which was thought nobody could ever break it. And what do they call that diving, where you hold your breath and you go down very, very deep? With no equipment. So, yeah, I'm not
sure what you're thinking of, but
there's depths there that's impossible for the body to survive, and people go way beyond those depths. So it goes on and on and on. And, if it's not too far from where you are and you focus on it clearly, you can achieve it. But if you're trying to go somewhere that's way out of your vibration, there's not enough vibration that you can ride on. So, somebody says, well, if you can do anything you want, why aren't there Superman flying around? And that's because the general population doesn't believe that you can achieve that. Therefore, there's a strong vibration that this is just not possible. And you can possibly do it for yourself, but if you want everybody else to see it and know it, it's not quite going to happen, It's just not going to happen. So it'll happen in time. When one person is a Superman and everybody can see, then everybody will start being Superman. We'll all start flying.
And as it turns out, being a Superman really isn't being a Superman.
Exactly. Then what? So you've got these powers. Then what? And then what? And then what? You start realizing it is really about playing with the contrast. And it doesn't matter where you are in the contrast, just play with it. Yeah. So
now Richard, both the author and the character in the book, now he's obviously telling the story, so he had to map the whole thing out and know where he was going with it. But he also plays the role, one that I'm familiar with, of being the person who doesn't really get what's going on, especially Richard in the book. I mean, he's just seeing this stuff and it doesn't make any sense. And I remember when I was reading it, it didn't make a lot of sense to me either. I'm thinking, what is, this is like a nice fantasy tale, but I mean, where does this fit into reality? It doesn't fit into reality. There's nothing real going on here, and I can imagine being that, biplane barnstormer flying around the Midwest, giving rides to people and running into this other barnstormer and he's floating, wrenches in the air and
he's landing planes in impossible short distances.
Yeah, and all kinds of stuff like that. And like, what do you make of that? That's a strange.
Making all the bugs on your windscreen suddenly start flying.
They just turn away, flying away. It's amazing. Yeah,
resurrecting from the dead.
And that's no different from somebody who is exploring law of attraction for the first time now. It's the same experience. Yeah. Exact same experience.
I was just looking on the group just now, Law of Attraction Changed My Life Facebook group, that one lady was saying, I've just broken away. Not broken away. I'm a Christian, but I had the strong feeling that law of attraction was right, and I only briefly looked at it, and she was saying that, I'm now following it because it just feels right, and I'm trusting. I think the gist I got from it. So, just give me 1 second there. I've got to do something, otherwise the laptop will die.
Oh, yeah, well, we don't want that.
I've got to turn it on.
I'll tell you what, while you're plugging that in, I'm going to do our usual promo announcements and remind people that if you're not yet a subscriber to the podcast, feel free to visit the homepage of our website, loatoday.net, where you will find a nice big icon at the top of the page inviting you to become a subscriber. And once you subscribe, of course, you just walk through the process. It just walks you right through it. And then once you subscribe, all of our episodes come streaming to your smartphone every single time that we publish. And also, we're now live streaming to YouTube. We've been live streaming to Facebook for the last 6 months or so, and now we decided we're going to start live streaming to YouTube for a while. And if you're wanting to follow us on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to our channel, which is where you're watching right now. And also, click that, if you're on a smartphone, tap that little bell icon, because that gives you the notification every time that we're publishing something there. And then, of course, share the fact that you're listening with other people so that they know that where they can get their daily dose of happy. So those are our promo announcements for the day. And now, is the computer going to be, is the computer going to live, Louis? I mean, it's not going to die instantly.
I haven't got that power. It's just...
Well, to anticipate the book, argue for your limitations and they're yours. Oh, no, we haven't gotten there yet. That's right.
Yeah, I love the Messiah's Handbook. That is just
I think that comes up in the next chapter, actually. Mm-hmm. So, should we go on to the next chapter? When we got time, why don't we?
Yeah, sure.
Why don't we get into chapter 4? So
it's a very short one.
And I was right. It is about the Messiah's Handbook. So, chapter 4. Where do you learn all this stuff, Don? You know so much, or maybe I just think you do. No, you do know a lot. Is it all practice? Don't you get any formal training to be a master? Well, they give you a book to read. I hung a fresh-washed silk scarf on the flying wires and stared at him. A book? Yeah, Saviour's Manual. It's kind of the Bible for masters. There's a copy around here somewhere if you're interested. Yeah, you mean a regular book that tells you, whoa. And he rummaged around for a while in the baggage space behind the headrest of the Traveler and came up with a small volume bound in what looked like suede. Messiah's Handbook, Reminders of the Advanced Soul. What do you mean Saviour's Manual? It says Messiah's Handbook. Oh, something like that. He started to pick up things around his airplane as though he thought it was time to be moving on. I leafed through the book, a collection of maxims and short paragraphs. Oh, here we go. Perspective. Use it or lose it. If you turn to this page, you're forgetting that what is going on around you is not reality. Think about that. And remember where you came from, where you're going, and why you created the mess you got yourself into in the first place. You're going to die a horrible death, remember. It's all good training, and you'll enjoy it more if you keep the facts in mind. Take your dying with some seriousness, however. Laughing on the way to your execution is not generally understood by less advanced life forms, and they'll call you crazy.
I love that.
I mean, I have to go with Don on this one. If I were reading that one, I'd say, I quit. I'm done. I'm not interested in being a messiah. Have you read this about losing your perspective, Don? No. That part's interesting, too. No, he hasn't read it. It's his book. He hasn't read it. Well, it says you have to die a horrible death. Well, you don't have to. It depends on the circumstances and how you feel like arranging things. Are you going to die a horrible death? I don't know. Not much point in it, would you think, now that I've quit the job? A quiet little ascension ought to be enough. I'll decide in a few weeks when I finish what I came for. I put him down for kidding the way he did from time to time and didn't know then that he was serious about the few weeks. I went on into the book. It was the kind of knowledge a master would need, all right. Here's some more good stuff. I love this one. Learning is finding out what you already know. Doing is demonstrating that you know it. Teaching is reminding others that they know just as well as you. You are all learners, doers, and teachers. I tell you, Louis, I have quoted that so many times in my life to people. Your only obligation in any lifetime is to be true to yourself. Being true to anybody else or anything else is not only impossible, but the mark of a fake messiah. Very true. The simplest questions are the most profound. Where were you born? Where is your home? Where are you going? And what are you doing? Think about these once in a while and watch your answers change. So already he's talking about what we often would call ultimate questions, or at least what my generation called ultimate questions. I'm not sure what millennials call it, but basically, what's the meaning of life? Where did all this come from? What's the purpose of all this stuff? And then the best one of all, you teach best what you most need to learn. I don't know if that's exciting or depressing. It's both, really. Because I think back to all of my teachers and I realized, wow, they didn't understand this stuff any more than I did. Okay, so anyway, it says, "You're awfully quiet over there, Richard," said Shimoda, as though he wanted to talk with me. "Yeah," I said, and then I went on reading. If this was a book for masters only, I didn't want to let go of it. Next one from the book. "Live never to be ashamed if anything you do or say is published around the world, even if what is published is not true." Boy, is that appropriate for this modern era. Holy cow. "Your friends will know you better in the first minute you meet than your acquaintances will know you in 1,000 years. And the best way to avoid responsibility is to say, I've got responsibilities." Was he ever a politician? I mean, it sounds like a politician right there. I accept responsibility for that. And then they don't do anything. I noticed something strange about the book. "The pages don't have numbers on them, Don." "No," he said, "you just open it and whatever you need most is there." "A magic book." "No, you can do it with any book. You can do it with an old newspaper if you read carefully enough. Haven't you done that? Hold some problem in your mind, then open any book handy and see what it tells you?" No. "Well, try it sometime." So I tried. I closed my eyes and wondered what was going to happen to me if I stayed much longer with this strange person. It was fun to be with him, but I couldn't shake the sense that something not fun at all was going to happen to him before long, and I didn't want to be around when it did. Thinking that, I opened the book with my eyes still closed, and then opened them and read, "You are led through your lifetime by the inner learning creature, the playful spiritual being that is your real self. Don't turn away from possible futures before you're certain you don't have anything to learn from them. You're always free to change your mind and choose a different future or a different past." Choose a different past? Literally or figuratively? Or how did it mean? I think my mind just boggled, Don. I don't know how I could possibly learn this stuff. "Practice," he said. "A little theory and a lot of practice," he said. "Take you about a week and a half." A week and a half. Yeah, believe you know all the answers and you know all the answers. Believe you're a master and you are. I never said I wanted to be any master. That's right, he said. You didn't. But I kept the handbook and he never asked for it back. And that's the end of that chapter. These are short chapters.
No, that's great.
Have you ever done that, though, with a book or a newspaper? I mean, I think probably everybody's done that at one time or another, but is that something you ever engaged in on any kind of regular basis, just seeing what message it had to tell you?
I don't have an active belief that it'll help me, so I don't bother. You
don't bother? Okay. So that was never really a big thing for you.
It's not something that I feel is necessary. I just feel my way around it, and I get my answers. I don't have to really go outside myself for them. It's not necessary.
What's your biggest takeaway from that chapter? Anything that was grabbing your attention? Anything that was just jumping out at you?
In the beginning, when you first read the book and you heard you teach best what you most need to learn, do you get now how that works with the law of attraction?
How it works with the law of attraction? Well, everything works with the law of attraction. I'm not.
Can you explain
sure I understand what the question is.
Point of view?
Oh, well, yeah. When you're teaching something, you're focused on it, and when you're focused on it, especially if it's something that you're passionate about, you're going to attract more like it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to get more and more opportunities to learn from the subject, whatever it is that you're discussing, because it's just going to keep. The universe is just going to keep bringing you more and more and more and more. So, I mean, that's my take on it. What's your take?
No, it's exactly that. So when I first read it, I didn't understand that. The law of attraction was not clearly explained to me. Now that I understand the law of attraction, whatever you're thinking about, you're going to get more of it. So if you're teaching it, you're going to get more of it. It's just the way it is. It doesn't work any other way. So it really makes a lot of sense after a while. And putting the law of attraction into practical application, you start seeing that you want to be quite clear about what you want to focus on, because that's going to give you more. It's going to give you more, and it's going to give you more. And a lot of people on the Law of Attraction group also would say things like, I'm finding it really, really, really hard to be positive. I know you're supposed to be with the Law of Attraction and all the rest of it. That always belies to me a basic misunderstanding of what the Law of Attraction is and how it works.
Yes, right.
And if people came to the real appreciation about the importance of negativity, then they will stop fighting it.
And to also understand what the importance of positivity is. I mean, the point isn't to be positive all the time. The point of positivity is that when you're in a positive place, you do your best attracting. But that doesn't mean that
no, you don't necessarily do your best attracting when you're positive.
Well, let me be more precise. You do your best attracting what you most want.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
You're right. That was not a precise statement. So thank you for pointing that out. But I mean, that's the whole point of being positive. But you're right. Negativity is something that requires a little more appreciation. And I like actually the way Cindy describes it, Cindy Chavez, who does the Wednesday afternoon show with me. She says she's not really crazy about calling stuff positive or negative. She prefers talking about preferred or not preferred. And I've kind of adopted that, because when I express things that way, now I try to focus more on what I prefer and less on what I don't prefer. I try to stay in that preferred place as much as I can. And now it starts to make more sense. Now, does that mean that I never dip into the not preferred? Hell no, I'm dipping in not preferred all the time. The easiest way to understand how everybody dips their toe, at the very least, into not preferred is to look at what people prefer in their entertainment. Just look at the movies and the television shows and the books and the theatrical productions. And what you'll see is one drama after another, one non-preferred situation after another. And they're enthralled by it. They're fascinated by it. That's part of what you might call the human condition. We are just so heavily focused on it, and we're paying attention to it all the time. So, it's not like we have any lack of it, and it's not like we're not interested in looking at it. We have plenty of it, and we love looking at it. Mm-hmm. So when I look at it that way, I realize contrast isn't an issue. We've got plenty of it. It's right there. It's there for us to enjoy if we want to, or to feel good we're not actually a part of it, even though we're now attracting more of it because we're watching it. But, to appreciate that we have all this preferred and not preferred going on. And in that preferred and not preferred going on, that's where we get our training. That's where, by having that constant flow of preferred, not preferred situations flowing to us, we learn to practice. Yes, I like that. No, I don't like that. Yes, I like that. No, I don't like that. And now we become more and more discerning and start attracting more and more of what we like into our life. That's the great value of it.
Mm. And it's really simple, isn't it? It's very, very simple, and not taught to us as kids, not taught to us.
No.
And, it's made such a difference to my children. Even a 3-year-old can start feeling it, not necessarily understanding it, but hey, I'm not sure I understand it, to be perfectly honest. I know I understand it better than I did, 40 years ago, but I'm still learning it. I don't know. I think you're explaining it quite well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So it's really, it's really understanding, that it's the journey that's important and not the destination. So the destination would be whatever you've wanted, put out in the universe, and you've got or not got, manifested, that's a destination. But there's always another one and another one and another one. So that's not important anymore. So the only thing that's important is, how long am I focusing on what I don't want, and how long am I focusing on what I do want? And consequently, my emotional state will be higher, which means I'll have a slightly happier life. And really, I think that's what a lot of people really want. They want their life to flow, just be a bit easier, a bit happier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the law of attraction can really, really help you with that, because, as I mentioned before, the biggest advantage that the law of attraction's given me is it's allowed my mind to relax. This mind that intensely wanted to know from a young age what's the reason for life, the universe, and everything. And I must admit, the answers are so simple now, so clear to me that I can't even talk about it for too long, because I would have said the same thing just again and again in different ways.
Yeah, I know how that is.
And I would never believe that the answer would be so simple.
Mm.
The biggest thing is really getting your head around that you create your own reality and you're the only person who lives in your universe. If you can get those really integrated into you, then everything else becomes so crystal clear. It just becomes absolutely clear. And it doesn't take that long, to be honest. I mean, I've been studying the law of attraction for about 3 years, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably understood it fairly well after year 1, pretty good after year 2, and year 3 teaching it. So it's really so simple. It's trying to get people from their perspective to start looking at it from another perspective. And when they do, it becomes easy for them. And then everybody starts sharing that. And, the world will tend to become a happier place, not a better place. I wouldn't want to live into a very safe, lovely, mollycoddled lifestyle that just...
Well, I'm not sure that's a better place, but I understand what your point. It doesn't sound all that good to me, to be honest.
Yeah, I've always felt that I'd be particularly good at living during a war or during violent times.
Mm.
I'd be very, very efficient and effective during those times.
Well, remind me not to live too close to you. We'll just do everything via the internet. That way I'm at a safe distance. Yeah.
Vibes aren't limited to distance. Eh?
Oh, no. You mean I have to change my perspective and focus on what I want instead? Oh, God.
Out of your life, Walt.
Okay, Louis, you're fired.
Bye. Nice knowing you.
It's true, though. You made an interesting comment, too. You referred to a fairly common cliche that it's the journey, not the destination. And when you said that, I had a thought that came to my mind. And I realized we really can't avoid the journey. The journey happens regardless of whether we're paying attention to it. It just keeps right on going. What so many people are trying to do is they're trying to avoid focusing on the journey. And that's an interesting thing. I mean, that's where a lot of dysfunction comes from. That's where a lot of disappointment comes from. That's where a lot of frustration comes from, a lot of depression, a lot of anger, a lot of hatred. It all comes from, I don't want to focus on this journey. I don't want this. I don't like this journey at all. I want to be on a different journey, but I don't know how to get to another journey, so I'm stuck on this journey. But I'm not going to look at this journey that I keep looking at.
And they just get more.
No!
It's so crazily simple. It's so crazy. Now, I can solve everybody's problem. If
so
they
do you
change their perspective and their thinking, I can help them.
So do you agree with the book that those who are the teachers are the ones who are most in need of learning it? Do you think that's true?
Well, I have learned that I understand the law of attraction very, very well. But now I'm learning to present it. So I'm learning, but I'm learning something else.
Mm-hmm.
And a teacher may not be learning his subject when he's teaching it, but he will be learning something while he's teaching.
True.
And it just becomes a circle of different things that different people are learning. And when you're learning it, when you're teaching it, you're learning from the student something not necessarily related to the subject you're teaching, but something else. And so it becomes everybody's learning a bit of something along the way and teaching all at the same time, as it says.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite great when you get the clarity of how that all works, because, I love teaching and I have a lot of fun with it. And I learned that in doing what I love and what I have passion for, I get excited and I have a good time, and it's really pleasant and pleasurable. So I'm getting something that I really want out of it. And somebody else thinks that, I'm making some sense and they're learning from me. So that's great. I I'm not even particularly involved in that aspect. That's their trip.
Mm-hmm.
But my trip is really just enjoying presenting and doing and teaching and having fun with it all. So if everybody was like that, you'd want to go to every seminar there was. You wouldn't be worrying, you'd be sitting watching people that were excited for themselves, raising their vibrations, and you just pick it up. You wouldn't even need to listen to the information. I learned that when I was in a spiritual group for many, many years. I used to go to all the seminars, and in the beginning I went to understand the knowledge, and then after a while I just went there for the feel of it. And I'm sure a lot of maybe the reborn Christians agree with that as well.
Probably, yeah.
Those churches, because you really feel good after going there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you stop looking for the obvious, and you stop even looking for the thought and the thinking anymore, because everything is so clear that now you want to milk life. Now you want to find, really, what do I want, and how do I find the building blocks to come into place so that I can step on them to move a little bit further forward to what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And we all want something.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody I know who doesn't want something.
Yeah.
I remember somebody saying to me, "Oh, but I got everything I ever want in my life," and they were looking very haggard, and their whole face was tortured, and there was all these things about them, but no, my life's perfect, absolutely perfect. There's nothing I want to change. It's like, okay. I'm not denying that people will not want to recognize it or refuse to recognize it, that they haven't got everything in life. And that they want, but it's very much not a truth. You've got like 10 or 20 lifetimes of stuff sitting in your vortex that wants to come out, and you don't let any of it out, your body's going to take physical strain, and it's going to reflect very clearly the resistance that you have.
And that's a key point right there. That's been a topic of conversation here on the podcast from a variety of different perspectives, not just, with this particular book, but with the various books that we talk about and the conversational topics and so forth. The point of resistance and how to deal with resistance. And I think you just eloquently pointed out, we have lots and lots of stuff in our vortex that's built up over millennia. But we're now trying to learn how to let it out. So my question to you is, in what ways and to what degree do you think illusions helps teach us to learn how to let it out, to release that resistance?
The first thing illusions does to you when you read it is it makes you feel good. It makes you feel invincible. Your higher self is agreeing with the information, so it's giving you positive vibes. And that alone is raising you up, all by itself. Right. So you really know, you just know when somebody's bullshitting and when somebody's telling something that agrees with you. You just know. And that is just your intuition chewing through the information, handing it to your source energy, and your source energy comes back and says negative, positive emotion, and so you run with it. So illusions, quotes, are just so amazing. So let's just go through one or two of those again. One about your family and friends. I love that one.
Let's see, which one is that one? Your friends will know you better in the first minute you meet than your acquaintances will know you in 1,000 years.
So I often look at it as that your parents and your family, you may never really get to know. You may not really know or understand them at all. Okay? But then Walt and I meet and we understand each other like beautifully, yeah?
Exactly, yeah.
And you probably know me much better than most of my family. And that's the way it truly is. So if you go and you let the law of attraction work, so you don't get too hung up on your family, is that important? You let the law of attraction bring the appropriate people to you. You can now have a vibrational group around you that is of a similar vibration, and you can rise together and go up and up and up. And, some people think it's traumatic that your parents didn't bring you up and you landed up with this uncle or aunt or something. But when you speak to those people, they say, oh, well, they were amazing. They brought me up amazing. It was so good. And, this was right and that was right. And so it goes on and on and on. And, if we don't get too attached even to our own personal immediate family, I'm not saying that you can't have an incredible relationship with them. You could be on the same wavelength, etc. They didn't join your family because they were that much out of vibration with the family dynamic. They joined it because they were in vibration with it. So you didn't start off in the wrong place. So, you've got a lot of potential in the family to work with, but it's become very enjoyable for me to bump into like-minded souls who are out there, who are focused on achieving their own things in a similar way, with a similar philosophy, and are working at it with the understanding that you have. And it's just so incredible. There's so many amazing individuals out there. Just blow me away.
Of course, family is a big topic for many people because I don't remember who said it, but we don't pick our family in this life. It doesn't seem like we pick our family. Now, through teachings that we have from very spiritual advisors, we learn, well, actually, we probably did pick our family before we got here. But for many of us, it's, I didn't want to be in a family where I'm dealing with all this chaos and dysfunction, and my father beats me, or my father abused me, or my mother treats me bad, or whatever, all this kind of stuff. So about the last thing a lot of people want is to even consider the idea of their family being somebody that they would want to be close to. And they're probably the ones who have the most challenge when it comes to identifying with and accepting this premise from Law of Attraction teaching, that our true family is the one that we pick rather than the one that we're born into. I mean, on the one hand, they like that idea. That sounds appealing. And on the other hand, the thought that's in the minds of so many people is, well, why did I end up with this family? I don't want this family. I don't like the way they treat me. I just feel like this was the wrong family. How did I end up there? I mean, that's tough. That's a tough concept.
Yeah, the people think it's tough, but it's exactly what they created for themselves.
Which is the last thing they want to hear, by the way.
But the most useful thing they'll ever hear.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I'm not here to codify, people who need holding their hand. It's not what I believe my function is. My function is to tell them the way I see it to be, and let the chips fall where they may. They may be ready for it, they may not, and that'll be it. If they're not interested in listening to the kind of message and concept that I'm letting out, then there will be somebody who will be of a closer vibrational match who will be able to help them.
Good point. Yeah.
And it's not my job to fix everybody. It's not my job to fix anybody.
Fix anybody? No, not really.
So, it's fun when people take what you teach and run with it and use it and all the rest of it. But I don't even get too mixed up in all of that anymore.
Sorry, I had a cat that was giving me a hard time. I had to let him out.
No, Walt, why did you attract that to yourself?
Actually, I didn't let him go. And that's the whole point, learning to let go of this stuff. I'm kind of like you. I try to focus on my stuff, stay in my path, but I also do have a tendency to attract people who are asking the kind of question I was bringing up here. And on those occasions where I decide, okay, I'm going to try to help them out, I always redirect them back to the main thing. Don't get hooked up on, well, why would I want to attract any of this into my life? Yeah, you did. Okay. And I will even say you attract this into your life, but that's not the point. What do you want to attract next?
Yeah. Where are you going?
Yeah. Okay. So I attracted that. So what? I've been exploring this modality called SRT, Spirit Response Therapy, that Bill G introduced me to. And I like some of it, But the one thing that I keep running into with it that I don't know exactly how to express it. It rubs me the wrong way. Maybe that's the best way to say it. There's a part of it that rubs me the wrong way.
They're spending more time on what they don't want instead of what they want.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
With most of the therapies, it's often like that. And it rubs you the wrong way because you're now very clear about the law of attraction and you know what is right and what's wrong, and you're more in tune with listening to your higher self saying this is positive emotion, this is negative emotion, and then you just can't carry on down the route of spending too much time in more than 14 seconds on part of the world. You just don't want to do it because you know the universal law of attraction is going to expand it.
It isn't even right or wrong, actually. It's more like preferred or not preferred. And I think that's one reason I am looking at it. I'm still studying it. I'm still looking at it, but not because I want to focus on all that stuff that I don't prefer, but rather I'm asking myself a very fundamental question. There's a cool part to SRT because it does help you connect in with your inner being and improve your communication. It's just that the way they teach it, they're so focused on all these terrible things that happened in your past life and that's going on in your current life and all these things that are attaching to you, that are holding you back, blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, there's this really cool tool here. Is there a way we can use this to focus on what we want instead of focusing on what we don't want? That, to me, is the attractive part.
You can use any of these tools correctly just by spending less time on what you don't want.
Yeah.
Say, okay, I understand that what I don't want is my expansion. So it's very important that I know what it is, be aware of it, look at it, but I'm going to do that in a very short period of time. Okay. And then I'm going to follow the rocket of desire quickly because I've now practiced that. I've looked at a lot of things I don't want, and I've started to realize that you could just look at it very, very simply. I hate it when the cat comes in and scratches me all the time. I know what I do want. I do want the cat not to be around when I'm okay. So it becomes very easy once you started realizing that that's how simple it is. It's not more complicated than that. And you can take anything and logically just turn it into the other side. And it really doesn't become challenging after a while. It just becomes, why did I spend so much time on that this time? Why'd you let it?
There's that. But there's also the creativity side to it because
there's creativity following that rocket.
There's tremendous creativity. I mean, with the SRT, they give you there's something like, I don't know, 30 charts or something like that you can use for your pendulum and it's asking all these questions and so forth. And 29 of them are all focused on stuff that you don't want, and one's focused on stuff that you do want, and it's fairly limited in that. Well, before I even spent much time learning all this stuff, I mean, I've been trying to learn how to do the technique, how to do the method. I'm trying to get that ironed out. But once I've got the method down, I've already started creating new charts for myself. But my charts are on a completely different topic from what their charts are all about. My charts are more on what I want than what I don't want. And that's an interesting thing for me, or for anyone to explore. I mean, for me, it's interesting just because I like the idea of trying to use this to, create a new set of charts and see if I can point this in a direction that's more interesting, more palatable, more interesting, and more toward my liking, toward my taste. But at the same time, it's also an opportunity to see how can I take something that I don't like and refocus it, pivot it around to something that I do like. That's really, I think, what the exercise is that I'm enjoying the most. That learning how to pivot in a real world situation. Because it's one thing to talk about this stuff. It's another thing to actually go do it.
Wow. It's not really that tricky.
It's not tricky. No, I don't mean that it's tricky. I mean that you can be the armchair, to use an American football phrase, you can be the armchair quarterback, or you can actually get out in the field. Which do you want to do? I mean, if you want to be an armchair quarterback all your life, well, okay, there are lots of people who do that, but I kind of like to get out in the field.
Loved about you last week, Walt, was you were on a high. You woke up and you were absolutely flying.
Yeah.
Okay. And those experiences are what you need to start milking. And those experiences become more and more often. And they become more of the norm and less of the unusual. And it becomes so exciting and so viscerally. But all I'm guessing all of that positivity and enjoyment that you had was based on mental preparation. 6 years of teaching the law of attraction and talking about it.
Hardly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the momentum is now kicking in. The thinking is now turning to the other side and focusing more on what it wants. And then you get those, wow, I'm just on top of the world. I get so full of energy and it's just amazing. And you start riding the wave, and then you start milking the wave, and you start having a lot more fun. So yeah, I'm just enjoying watching your journey there, because it's just bang on track. It's perfect. It's brilliant.
And it's fun. I mean, I've gotten to the point now where let's see, if I think back to when you first came on the program, which was about, 8 or 9 months ago, something like that. When you first came on to where I am right now, and I'm looking at it in terms of the Abraham chart, the 22 step emotional guidance scale. At that time, I was probably floating somewhere in the middle, maybe a little bit toward the positive side. Now I find myself at 2 or 3 levels from the top. So that kind of like is an indicator of where this whole thing has been going to. And it hasn't been a smooth curve. It's been up and down and all over the place, but that's where the overall trend has been. And
if it wasn't, you're dead.
Yeah, this is true. Exactly. And I had lots of opportunities.
So the back of Illusions, the last thing it says on the back page, it says, if you want to know if your mission on Earth is complete, if you're alive.
Oh, right, yeah. Where is that?
You turn on the back of the page, the last.
Well, the last page of the main story is everything in this book may be wrong. That was the last thing.
No, if you turn the cover around and look at the back.
The cover says, more than a great national bestseller, a great way of looking at life.
Oh, okay. I thought it was right at the end there somewhere.
I remember what you just quoted. I thought that it was more toward the interior, but we'll just have to keep reading the book in future episodes.
Yeah,
that's all. It's very simple. We'll find out that way. So that's all good. Well, yeah, and we're past an hour anyway, so it's probably good time to draw this out. But looking forward to talking about it again next week. So this is what we've been talking about, Illusions by Richard Bach, which came out in, I think, 1975. And we're trying to encourage more and more people to get to know this book, because this is a cool book, Louis. It's a really cool book.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It has influenced both of us, and it's influenced tens of millions of people. And I'll ask one last question before we're done and see what your take is on this. How many people, what percentage, let's put it this way, what percentage of the people who are Richard Bach fans do you think are also into law of attraction?
I can throw a figure out there, but I wouldn't know.
I don't really know either. It's an interesting thing for me. I wonder how many people have made the association.
Yeah, I would think it's quite a few.
I would think. Yeah. I mean, they probably don't make a lot of noise about it because they're busy living their lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it's still cool stuff. Anyway, well, thank you very much. Looking forward to carrying it on next week, and I hope you have a great week. I'm sure you will. You always do. Have a good time. And thank you to our live stream listeners. Thank you to our podcast listeners as well. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye.
Cheers, guys.